Welcome back. And joining us for a look at the day's markets action is David Shapiro from Sasfin Securities. David, an absolute pleasure in the new year. Thank you for your time today.
Pleasure.
Well, David, 2023 was a bit of a tricky run, I would say, globally and even here at home with our own equities. Lots of uncertainty and I would say jitters. I'm keen to get your thoughts on what we're anticipating for 2024.
Globally, I'm very bullish. I think that the themes that are coming through are going to drive markets higher. What's going to happen in South Africa on the JSE is not easy to understand. I think there are a lot of things holding us back. But if global markets do pick up, and we see sentiment improving, we're going to benefit as well. It will follow through here. So I think that's our best hope. But I mean, even we're now talking about inflation in the US getting towards 2% and falling below 2%, which is what has held back markets for so long. We're going to get the CPI number tomorrow. But I think following that, you're already getting Fed officials turning, I don't know whether to call it dovish. The Fed pivoted, or certainly Powell pivoted in December. But I think when interest rates start to go down, of course, that's a big signal for markets to go better. Even though we're discounting it, even though we're talking about it, when it does start to happen and the pace increases, you can bet that it's going to be good for global markets.
An interesting one also that I think I'm keen to look at, David, is just the China story, which has been very difficult for South Africa, but also just looking at global demand and China's ability, to participate meaningfully in the global economy again. I'm keen to get your thoughts on what we're anticipating there.
I think that's a wild card. It's still very difficult. They're still being dragged down by a lot of issues, and particularly on the property market. And we haven't seen, number one, the stimulus coming through. They're trying, but there's nothing big happening there. And I remain very skeptical about China. I'd rather play it through consumption, through Chinese now traveling in a lot more than they were. Look, it's still a rich nation. There's still a nice middle class. But rather than trying to play it through the commodity markets. But look, you've got iron ore at 135 or 130. It's held up pretty high. We thought it was going to go lower, which does help some of our mining companies. But it's very difficult to read the commodity side, especially I'm looking at the platinum price, which is just not doing anything and making it very difficult for local miners. So for South Africa, China is very important, but it's not that easy to read. It's much easier to read the US and Europe. Yeah.
And I mean, speaking about Europe, I'm keen to get your thoughts on the UK or maybe England as a whole. That economic environment has been less than pretty. And I don't know if the fundamentals, could possibly assist as we go off of this interest rate narrative where interest rates could possibly be lower by the end of the year. What is happening with England?
Exactly. I wish I could give you an answer. It's very complicated. The only thing is that if we look at the JSE over a 10-year period in dollars, it was kind of flat. There's only one market that I know that underperformed even the JSE, and that was the FTSE 100. That was the UK market, largely because it's very similar to us with a high incident of mining stocks. They've got oil stocks and financial stocks and so on. But I can't make head or tail of it. If you had to say to me, pick a stock in the UK that you like, I'd struggle. Maybe an AstraZeneca, which is really not really UK. It just seems to be listed there. And so a very difficult market. And I think if you read the politics, you can understand why. Election will take place there, and it's doubtful whether the Conservatives will stay in. So it's not an easy industry. It's not an easy economy to read as well. So those are two difficult questions. So.
I must ask you also, David, with the interest rate picture, set to change, are we going to possibly see more investment back into equities, with people moving away from bonds? Because we did see that a bit last year with people moving away from equities because there were just better returns, with fixed income markets.
On the local market, the bond market still remains very attractive. I'm battling to find places to go on the JSE. I have to be honest. I think call it younger, smaller investors, I think there might be opportunities in small and medium caps. But, you're competing against the US where you've got AI just attracting huge amounts of spend. I know it's not even overhyped because the amount of money that's going to go in is just enormous. You've got other themes, still the renewable energy theme. You've got the weight loss drugs, massive industry, huge demand. So there's so many themes playing out in the US in which you can, whet your appetite and build a portfolio. It's very hard to find the local, very hard for the local market to compete with this. And this is not anything to do with Iran. It's not anything to do with politics or economics. It's just simply the opportunities of those inventive businesses that you've got, mainly in the US. Look, there are plenty of them in Europe. I must say that I was in the UK. I was in the US visiting family over December, and I came back via the UK. Just the airport in there. But the number of travelers now, the planes are full. New York was packed. I mean, and I'm saying with revelers, with just people coming to visit there. So I think travel's back in a big way. And when that happens, they're spending on cosmetics and they're spending on luxury and so on. So I'm quite optimistic that we're going in for pretty decent markets this year.
Okay, David, keen to get your stock pick for this afternoon. Which counter are you banking on?
Look, I'm a big AI freak. I'm not going to do it because that's pretty boring, but I'm going for this whole weight loss theme. And I think Eli Lilly is a company which Novo Nordisk leads the way with Wegovy and Ozempic, but I think Eli Lilly is going to come into the market. And even though it's had an incredible run, I still think there's upside this year for it. There's going to be more competition coming in for that area, but watch that theme. It's a big theme.
I believe you, David. Trust me. Thank you so much for your time this evening. It's always a pleasure. That was David Shapiro from Sasfin Securities.